Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining Foundry Live, the future of look development and lighting solutions. My name is Elise, and I am part of Foundry's industry marketing team. Today, members of our look development and lighting team are with us, but before they introduce themselves, I have a quick Foundry update, and I'd like to go over some housekeeping. First of all, today's session is being recorded, and a link of the recording will be sent directly to you when the webinar is over. Also, the session will end with a Q&A. So if you have any questions, please be sure to add them into the questions tab on the right-hand side of your screen. Also, I'd like to give a special thank you to our sponsors, Lenovo and AMD. We are working with Lenovo, AMD, and our other partners as a part of our new program to test selected workstations across all of our products. Thanks to our sponsors, we are excited to be giving away a ThinkStation P620, a Lenovo and AMD Threadripper system, which includes an NVIDIA Quadro RTX 5000 to one lucky attendee. To be eligible for the giveaway, you needed to register upon registration. And if you didn't opt in when you registered for today's event, you still have the opportunity to register for one of our 4 upcoming Foundry Live events happening over the next 2 weeks. Our schedule includes the launch of the Nuke 13. Our product team will be talking tomorrow about that, and also the Moto 15 release. Our research team will also be talking about the key forces and technologies driving change in the VFX industry, and we'll be wrapping up the Foundry Live series with an education summit. If you'd like some more information or to register, please visit our Livestorm page. Also, this year we are participating in several industry events. We recently took part in the HPA Tech Retreat and SparkFX, but be on the lookout for us at FMX, GTC, the Real-Time Conference, and SIGGRAPH this year. Also, I'd like to take this opportunity to mention that Foundry is actively involved in the Academy Software Foundation, as we use many of their open source projects that are widely used in production. We have representation on the board, the outreach committee, and are actively involved in the Technical Advisory Council in various working groups. To be successful, the Academy Software Foundation needs community members like you to contribute code, get involved, and help spread the word about the foundation. Visit their website, www.aswf.io, for more information on how to get involved. Also, Foundry has many learning resources available on our learning page, including tutorials, developer documentation, and release notes for all of our products. As part of our ongoing initiative to provide valuable learning resources, Foundry is excited to launch the Color Management Fundamentals in ACES Workflow Training in Nuke, created by Victor Perez and Netflix. For more information on the training material, please join our upcoming webinar on March 31st. And finally, stay connected with Foundry by subscribing to our YouTube channel, checking out our Insights Hub, where you can find case studies and articles on industry trends, or following us on social media. And with that, thank you all for taking the time to join today's webinar. I hope that you enjoy it, and that if you have any feedback, please feel free to reach out to us at virtual.events@foundry.com. The main part of the presentation has been pre-recorded for quality purposes, so we're all just going to go off screen here and play it for you, but we will be available in the chat. So enjoy.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the first webinar of Foundry Live 2021, partnered with Lenovo and AMD, and it's all about the future of look development and lighting solutions here at Foundry. My colleagues and I look forward to sharing with you our vision for Mari and Katana and to talk about some exciting work that's already underway. But first, let's talk about an internal change. To help us deliver everything we want this year and beyond, we now have a new look development and lighting super team inside Foundry that combines the developers, QAs, designers and product managers for both Mari and Katana. The knowledge and skills from one team only enhances the other. On top of that, it'll help us to reduce the friction of moving from one application to the other. Breaking down the barriers between Foundry applications is really important to our long-term vision, as you're going to see. The team is growing as well, including a larger product team that will make it easier for us to create the right tools for our existing and future customers. Firstly, let me introduce myself. I'm Gary Jones, the Lighting Product Manager. I started my journey with Foundry and Katana around 10 years ago as its first technical author, and then I moved into the wild and worked as a generalist before working in the film industry as a lighting TD using Katana, and then returning to Foundry around 3 years ago. And I am fortunate enough to be supported on the lighting team by Ariel.
Hi everyone, I'm Ariel and I'm an associate product manager for the lighting side of the team. My background is that I started using Katana in the industry as a pipeline artist, and then I came to Foundry as a creative specialist, so I was providing demos and training for clients. And I'm now really excited to have joined the product team and to apply my experiences working with studios to help continue to make Katana the great tool that it is.
I'm Rory, the product manager for Look Development at Foundry, and I'll be looking after Look Dev workflows in Katana as well as the entirety of Mari. Before this new role, I was the product manager for Mari for the last 4 years. Before Foundry, I worked in the VFX industry for 16 years, including various artistic roles across asset creation, as well as working as a pipeline TD, where I oversaw a VFX studio's asset workflow through texturing and shading in Mari and Katana. And I'm being assisted by Charlie.
Hey everyone, as Rory said, I'm Charlie and I'm the new Associate Product Manager for Look Dev. I've also been working alongside Rory in the Mari team for the past 4 years, starting off as Mari support and then working behind the scenes in the engineering team. Outside of Foundry, I've been an avid member of the texturing and shading community for many years. From engaging with artists on a daily basis, I'm a huge advocate for improving our artistic workflows to suit your needs, and so I'm super excited to be helping the team do just that across Mari and Katana.
Let's first talk about where we're going with Mari. And to start off, I'll hand over to Charlie to talk about the last year.
Over the past year, our work has been focused on improving our material workflows. Mari 4.7 acts as the culmination of our investment in the material system, fine-tuning and intentionally enhancing your creative experience. As a team of texture artists, we know that you'll sometimes want to try using that awesome procedural that your colleague made in your own projects. In 4.7, we wanted to make this as simple as possible. We introduced custom procedurals that encourage artists to offer their own procedural presets, and when exported, package all of their reference texture maps together in one shareable shelf item, as well as procedural masks that also allow you to rapidly block out where each layer affects the look of the asset. You can combine this workflow with our existing GeoChannel system to publish content that adapts to the shape and form of your models directly as a layer mask. With both features, you'll never again have to hunt through the network file paths for that one tiled image that makes everything just right. With these improved options to store and share content, we wanted to ensure that all artists were able to access their presets with ease. So, with that in mind, we refreshed our shelf palette to prioritize artist accessibility. We integrated new grouping options for organization, as well as a filtering and tagging system that reduces the time it takes to locate your shelf items. In 4.7, you'll see an intuitive and user-friendly UI that ensures that you'll find all of your content at your fingertips. One of our favourite new features is the ability to view any material in isolation. With the current material shader mode, you can fine-tune materials in a full lighting context without ever changing layer visibility settings. In 4.7, we listened to our node graph artists. We welcomed the highly requested material bakepoint node. Artists are now able to batch edit and bake complex material streams in one action, giving them more control to improve project performance with multi-layered materials. We also added command line post-processors to our bakepoint export, so you can convert images to render engine formats, allowing Look Dev artists to stream texture data directly from Mari to Katana. With all these new features and more, 4.7 elevates Mari's procedural workflows to new heights, allowing artists to paint a larger volume of assets with the same high-quality Mari standard. And now, back to Rory.
Thanks, Charlie. With our material system in great shape with the release of 4.7, in 2021 we plan to go in a fresh direction. To start, we have to address our Python 3 shaped elephant in the room with the VFX Reference Platform 2020 work we at Foundry are committed to. This is going to take a large bulk of our engineering effort this year, but there will be time for other features too. A key goal this year is to reduce pipeline friction by introducing interrupt workflows between Mari and Katana with USD. Beyond that, a lesson we learned from the incredible reception of our Mari 4.6 v4 release last year is that even the smallest improvements to existing features can have a large impact on an artist's quality of life. Therefore, any remaining development effort is going to be spent on improving an artist's quality of life by polishing and improving the existing features across all of Mari, some work of which we can preview today. But first, let me update you on our planned Mari to Katana interop workflows. Last year, we told you that Mari has always positioned itself in the heart of our studio's Look development pipeline, and that we see the future of studio pipelines being built on the Universal Scene Description format, or USD. We launched a USD Mesh Importer plugin in the open source repository alongside Mari 4.6v4's release last year. This plugin allows you to import USD documents into Mari meshes, taking advantage of USD features like native support for OpenSubdiv. This year, we wanted to allow artists to leave a USD to allow Mari and Katana to work better together. To start, we've introduced the USD Preview Surface into Mari as a new shader type. This will allow you to develop a preview look alongside your asset's primary render engine shader, like Pixar's PXR Surface or Arnold's Standard Surface shaders. We're planning to introduce a mechanism whereby you can export this USD Preview Surface along with flattened input channels to texture maps and a USD Shade Look document, ready to be brought into Katana or other USD-compatible DCCs with a pre-authored rich viewport representation. And in the future, we intend to allow you to author looks for both preview and render contexts, so that Mari can be your USD Shade-powered starting point for all your studio's Look-developed assets. To close off this look into Mari, I mentioned that we are working on quality of life improvements to some of Mari's existing features. I'd like to show you a sneak peek at something that is coming in the next major version of Mari. Mari's brush engine hasn't changed much since Mari 1.0, and it's always had a pretty fundamental limitation. A Mari brushstroke is made up of multiple splats of the chosen brush tip, and Mari could only use a single color for the entire brushstroke when composited onto the paint buffer. But now we've improved the engine to be able to change the brush tip color for each splat, seen here with a new jitter ability that fades between the chosen foreground and background color swatches. And of course, we can take this further with the long requested feature of a hue saturation value brush jittering. Here you can see how you can precisely control the range of each of these effects, enabling you to create some pretty artistic paint strokes. We've also extended our brush tip image support to allow you to utilize either the R, G, B, or A components, or the luminance of an image to allow more versatility in creating brush tips from any image format. In addition to this, you'll now be able to use full color brush tip images. When multiplied against the foreground color, you can now stamp the same image with varying color adjustments for more stylistic projects. We're really looking forward to seeing what awesome artworks you will paint with these new brush improvements. And that's a look at what's coming up in 2021 for Mari. Let us now look at Katana.
Thanks, Rory. So before we look ahead at what we're trying to achieve this year, let's have a quick recap of Katana in 2020. I'm really proud of the work the team managed to do. 3 great releases in 1 year, culminating in what I think may well be the best Katana release to date, Katana 4.0. For those of you who haven't had the pleasure of playing with the new version of Katana, here's Ariel to give you a rundown of some of the features of that release.
Hi everyone, so I'm going to go through what is new with Katana 4. The first feature I'll talk about is the image-based selection tool. And this enables you to select a piece of geometry from its rendered image. So all we have here is the monitor layer overlaid on top of the viewer, which is at this point empty. And as you hover over the render, the different pieces of geometry are then highlighted, and you can use this to make selections and work on your scenes. And that's without having to expand everything in the scene graph. So all you need to do now is send off a quick render and then pick up the elements you need. So the next piece of work from 4.0 was supporting USD shaders and lights inside Katana. The network material context now supports USD shading nodes, and you can preview them inside the viewer as well. And you can also import USD shaded assets and edit them with the network material edit node. There are also USD lights set up in this scene that we can see inside the viewer, and we can easily place them using the new lighting tools. And here we have other shaders assigned to this light as well. So in this case, it's assigned to a 3D light shader. So as we're moving this light, it's also modifying the light that will then be rendered out later on. So this is mainly giving us, at this point, a guide as to where the lights and shadows will fall, and giving us faster feedback. We've also made improvements to our network material workflow. So for those of you who don't know, 3.6 saw the network material edit node, and this enables you to pick up an already existing material and modify it with the whole network material available to you. What was new with 4.0 is that we saw improvements with the way we view the changes that are made in this node. So you can filter them visually based off of whether they've been edited, whether they're new, unchanged, or disabled. So from a top level, you can see and filter the changes that were made in this node. The new lighting tools were also a huge part of the Katana 4 release. In this example, we've masked out the lines, so we're seeing both the rendered image on top of the viewer that contains USD shaders and lights. And with the new lighting tools, you can now create lights and position them really easily in relation to a geometry. There are different lighting modes, and you can place lights based on where we might want specular highlights, reflections, or where the shadows should fall. And this allows lighters to have more control when placing lights. This little heads-up display on the top left corner gives you parameters for your lights that you can modify, and you can also customize this if you choose to. So this new lighting mode gives us a more interactive and easy experience when placing lights directly in the viewer. Here we have multiple live renders running at the same time, and this is part of Katana Foresight. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about that later on. We've made updates to our comparison tools in the Monitor tab, so you can now have a couple of images side by side with independent zooming and panning, and this is all about making it a lot easier to compare renders together. We've also made some changes with our catalog tab, so you can now resize the thumbnails interactively and they will update as the image is rendering. So now looking at the network material create node, this also saw some changes where you can create multiple materials within the same node and namespace them. So you can now share work across different materials within the same node. So if you want to share masks, texture files, whole sections of the node graph, this is now something that you can do. So I spoke briefly about Katana Foresight, and this is the ability to have multiple preview and live renders running at the same time. This means you no longer need to stop and wait for a render to finish to start the next one. What it aims to do is to help maintain a momentum as you're working. So Katana Foresight also provides a tool where you can send off multiple graph state variables at once. So if you want to preview all of your shots or all of your variations, this is now something that you can do. You can pass this through the Katana queue, which is a built-in render farm system. And this has a tab where you can track your renders, you can see their status or find the logs for each one. And this all helps to launch and track multiple renders, not only on your local machine, but also leverage the resources that you might have on the farm. So the aim with Katana Foresight is all about getting images back to your screen a lot faster and to maintain a momentum as you're working on your projects. So this was a very brief recap of what is new with Katana 4.0. Thank you for listening.
And that was just some of the features of Katana 4.0. I'll be mentioning a few more later on in the presentation. But some of those features are just stepping stones on the path to a larger journey. I'm now going to hand you over to Rory to talk about one of those journeys.
The Network Material Create node graph was first introduced in Katana 3.2 as the first part of a multi-stage development plan for refreshing our LookDev workflows. There are some features from our original root node graph that have not yet made it to the new Network Material Create context, which we intend to correct in upcoming releases. This includes shading group macros, as well as shading group parameter promotion, and looking to support live shading groups in this context. Building on these foundations, we want to elevate your look development experience with new features we have mocked up here. We want to bring you a rendering material preview window in true Katana style, with customizable template scenes with your own model's lighting and graph state variables. Additionally, working with our render engine partners, we plan to bring you the ability to inspect your material at any point in your network, pattern or BXDF, using the 1 to 0 shortcut keys like you can in Nuke and Mari. This is just some of the work we are planning for enhancing your look development experience with Katana. Back to Gary.
Another exciting block of work we'd like to build on from Katana 4.0 is the lighting tools. As Ariel already mentioned, this enables you to quickly and easily place and manipulate lights while looking through the render camera. But there's other parts of the lighting workflow that aren't covered yet by the lighting tools. We'd like to bring the light filters workflow that allows you to sculpt and shape a single light or a group of lights into the Hydra viewer, so you can continue to work full screen with the image while really dialing in the area you wish to illuminate. Similar to this, we'd also like to bring in the light linking and light constraints workflows and generally make them more artist friendly. One of the nice things about the lighting tools mode is that it makes selecting lights a doddle, as the only valid selection type is a light. But we recognise that some light shaders are designed with objects in mind, such as mesh or geometry lights, and would like to make this process easier through the lighting tools as well. The lighting tools themselves are built on top of the snapping toolset, which itself is built on top of the Hydra viewer. Thinking further forward, we'd like to enable the snapping tools and by extension the lighting tools to work with the rendered image as an alternative to the Hydra viewer. If the renderer is set up to provide world space position and the normal of the surface, all these workflows can work without ever having to bring geometry into the application, as the render itself could be taking place on your farm or even in the cloud and streaming the necessary information back to Katana using Foresight. Just for a moment, I want to talk about one of the problems that Katana was originally designed to solve. Traditionally, lighting has always been at the end of the VFX and animation pipelines. All of the departments feed into lighting, and historically this meant it was very difficult for lighting to start before the other departments were finished, or at least nearly done. Katana solved this through its recipe-based approach of allowing you to work with rough layouts and blocked-in animation, and as other departments iterated and progressed towards sign-off, very little additional work was needed inside Katana, and that's worked great on many projects including Oscar-winning VFX and animated films. But times move on, and Katana is moving with them. Right now, the main way to deliver assets from look development to lighting inside Katana involves a baking process using a Katana look file or KLF. But a shift in the industry has upstream departments wanting to sign off their work with better and better look development and lighting. Gone are the days of grayscale sign-off playbasts from animation. More and more supervisors want to see something closer to the final quality in their approval process, and Katana is listening. In Katana 4.0 we started on this journey by adding the ability to export in the industry standard interchange format, USD. Now, when developing the look for an asset, instead of writing out a KLF, you can write out a USD file instead. When writing out the look development for the lighting department, you're also writing out the look development for other departments at the same time. You can combine this with the ability to easily write out USD preview surface and render a targeted variance. So no longer is Katana at the end of the pipeline, but tightly integrated, improving the quality of deliverables from other departments by sending look development and soon lighting information back upstream, all based around familiar workflows inside Katana. The look dev and lighting artists can just continue to use existing tools that have worked for film after film over many years of Katana development. Here's the example we showed for the Katana 4.0 launch, with that new USD material bake node having replaced the traditional look file bake mechanism. Here the look of the asset is developed on the right hand side, all done in the same way as in previous versions of Katana. The same nodes, the same workflow, the only thing that's different is the replacement of the look file bake node. And after we've checked the look works with different lighting scenarios using our graph state variable tools, we then continue to bake it out. In this example we're writing out just one variant, but the export process enables you to easily bake multiple variants at the same time. Here it is written out as drone look 01, and once we've written it out we switch over to viewing the packaged asset. Right now it has an empty look. Next we change the reference look in an external editor, a step we've made easier in newer versions. Once we've done this, we switch back to Katana, and as you can see, the packaged asset is done and ready to send to other departments. A lot of engineering went into making this new mechanism available for studios and artists to build upon, as everything to do with our reading and writing of USD data is shipped in our external repository, and we've continued to build on those tools since our last major release. USD scale support was added in 4.0 v2, and in 4.0 v3 we added the ability to write out some RenderMan specific attributes using the USD RI schema, as well as the material network layout, colours and expansion state using the USD UI Node Graph Node API, with more work planned such as exporting lights in upcoming releases, all open source, all available to help you integrate Katana and reduce the pain points of moving between applications. Katana, the Look Development and Lighting team and everyone at Foundry are committed to reducing the friction in your day-to-day workflows, and I haven't even got to the exciting new piece of that puzzle yet. Before I get to that, the other part of the USD equation inside Katana is our Hydra-based viewer. We fundamentally changed the way we deliver data in the Hydra viewer in Katana 4.0, laying the groundwork for adding render delegate support for future versions of Katana, and we'll be working closely with our render partners to bring those to you. We also plan on adding a Foundry-specific render delegate, using the same technology that powers both Modo and Mari's viewports. This will enable us to improve on the visual fidelity of the viewer and to leverage some of the wonderful GL approximations of our render partners available in Mari, once again reducing the gap between applications. We also plan to bring instancing and volumes into the viewer in upcoming releases as well. Our version of USD has always been limited by our VFX Reference Platform, and the Katana team right now are currently working on VFX Reference Platform 2020, and this is going to enable us to move to a newer version of USD this year. It's also going to enable us to move to Python 3.7, but if you're not ready for that move, don't worry, the next version of Katana will be able to support both Python 2 and Python 3 versions. So, what's next? Ask anyone who's used Katana in production what makes it so special, and it won't be long before you hear them mention its sequence and shot-based workflows. The ability to work on lots of shots at the same time and apply lighting and other changes quickly and easily on multiple shots, a sequence, or even possibly across a whole show. Now with Katana 4.0 and the Foresight feature, we enable artists to quickly and easily get feedback for all those shots. Users could start multiple renders either on their local machine, on the immediate network, the farm, or potentially even the cloud, and have those renders streaming back to Katana, all at the same time. But our vision for that wasn't complete. For those that don't know what the limitations of Foresight are, let me quickly explain. With Katana 4.0, like displayed here, when I make a change to a light or anything else while performing a live render, the parameter change goes through a few steps before an attribute change is sent to the renderer. The live rendering system has always worked like this, but the limitation is that the same attribute change is sent to all live renders right now, whether the parameter change applies to them or not. This makes it impossible to make shot-specific changes when rendering multiple shots. Don't get me wrong, Foresight is still useful when doing lighting for a sequence or checking a material on lots of assets, but our next step is to remove that limitation with Foresight Plus. Here it isn't attribute changes that are the currency that is exchanged between Katana and the render process, but the changes to the Katana operations themselves. Soon you'll be able to sit back and start as many renders as you need, and nail your lighting throughout the day and make sure everything is just right in all your shots, giving you clear feedback rather than waiting until the next day for an overnight render. Even with the catalogue and monitor changes in Katana 4.0, we think it is time all these renders got the new home they deserve. And this new home is the Render Hub. Fully metadata driven, so you can find renders based on the shot or asset used or when they were rendered. You'll also be able to view as many shots as you need live inside one tab. This new tab will form the backbone of all the Imageit tools moving forward. Earlier on I mentioned the next exciting piece of the puzzle, and it is related to the work we've just been talking about. Once you have the ability to start another process either on your local machine, the farm or the cloud, what else might a lighter want to do with that? What about live nuke compositing, right there in your Katana window, updating live as you do your lighting? More and more the disciplines of lighting and compositing are interlinked, and with this upcoming feature, the difficulties of moving from one application to the other start to vanish. We've already done some prototyping in this area. Now the actual experience will probably be somewhat different, but here you can see a render live inside Katana is streaming to Nuke, going through a simple compositing process, in this case some colour correction and defocusing, and then streaming back to Katana. When this block of work is complete, the Nuke process could be run without the UI and sitting in the farm, enabling you to composite all those renders coming in through Foresight Plus, using remote machines to reduce the load on your local machine while seeing the renders inside Katana. Just generating another entry in the Render Hub. With so many exciting projects that our clients have been working on needing a tight integration between lighting and compositing, it would be great to help couple Katana and Nuke more tightly and reduce any pipeline friction. So, in future versions of Katana, an artist will be at the centre of a new infrastructure that empowers them to render and comp 25, 50, maybe even 100 shots, and turning our artists into super artists. And that concludes our presentation. So thank you all very much for listening, and make sure you catch the other Foundry Live presentations. Hi everyone, and welcome to this, the first webinar of Foundry Live.
Hello, everybody.
I don't think you want to listen to that again. Thank you all very much.
One thing you can tell that we have a wider product team is between Gary and myself, we've pretty much answered all the questions you've asked us in the questions tab, which is fantastic. But we're now live and ready to answer any further questions you have or to elaborate on anything in particular. So ask away. And so yeah,
probably should have been quite so diligent in the questions panel. It's like, yeah, we've covered all that. I think what we can do is, if we have a quick look, and because not everyone will have seen all of the questions in there, so maybe we can just go through them and start with the ones which have been upvoted and kind of read out the question and the answer to make sure that everyone knows. It'll also give us an opportunity to elaborate on some of those areas as well. So the top voted one was about variants inside Mari, and will that be supported? Rory, you answered that one, so do you want to elaborate?
Yes, so our first offering is going to be more of a kind of a quick flatten out what you have in Mari to get like a basic look file into USD, so you can move that across to USD Viewer or to Katana. But in future, we want to take a leaf out of Katana's book and how they're doing the USD material bake workflow, where you can kind of have multiple materials and ops and such in different kind of branches, and then bring them all into the material bake as each variant, and then kind of drive that. So that's a really cool way of working, and I love how versatile that is. So it's something we'll be looking at, but we first need to solve a few more technological things inside of Mari before we can get to like that level of versatility. But it's definitely something that Mari would like to have in it.
Cool. We have a question that hasn't got an answer, and it's a Katana related one. So I'm going to answer this one for Douglas. So if we can light different shots, is there a way to control the frame each render is rendering? Yes. So the idea being that you could actually kick off the equivalent of a first, middle, last, for instance, Doug. That idea that you're testing the initial part of a shot range, the middle and the last, or keyframes within it, and dispatch them, and then check your lighting works across all of those frames at the same time. That's one of the great possibilities with Foresight. You could even have some way at dispatch time of being able to do first, middle, last for multiple shots. It does mean you're going to have a reasonable render farm as well, but yeah, that will all be possible with Foresight. Great question, by the way.
I see the Material X question has been upvoted to the top, so I'll just go in a bit more context. So they aren't currently supported, and we're keeping a very close eye on the Material X library as it's been developed and extended into other various integrations. One of the things we're looking for is native support in our render engine partners for the Katana side. Of course, Katana doesn't necessarily do anything with shaders. It's just kind of brokers a shading network. So it's the render engine needs to know how to interpret that and how to use like the shader gen layer, etc. So once they bring their support, we'll happily broker a Material X graph in our UI and feed that to a renderer. And basically working backwards from that is when we'll look into doing integration for Mari. Currently, Mari, we're kind of focused on getting the USD workflow sorted out first, then with the previous surface shaders and hopefully the render engine shaders natively, and then we'll be looking broader at MaterialX generic shading networks.
Cool.
Gary, what do you see?
While we have another Katana question that hasn't been answered. So, Joseph, how soon will the new Katana lighting tools with Hydra integration be available? Ariel, do you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, so the new Katana lighting tools that you just saw was actually new in Katana 4.0. So that is something that was released last year. I think that was the question, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty well. Unless you're thinking, Joseph, about the other things that we showed, the other areas that we're looking to build on, that's going to depend on our developer bandwidth how many of those things fit in this year, but they're definitely on our roadmap for as soon as possible. So
let's see, we have a question from Anthony about baking 2D maps in Katana, feeding them back to Mari. Gary, can you talk a bit about the renderer plugins and how they are able to, if they're able to render non-camera based, like UV based images in Katana? Is that something that we're currently able to do? As my assumption was, it's not quite there yet. There's no standard for that. That's just a problem we'd like to solve first before we can kind of feed that into Mari.
Yeah.
How would you go about doing that currently in Katana?
Yeah, I think that's so. Whereabouts are you looking at the question? Just so I
Upvote 4, Anthony Kajawa. It's basically asking about baking maps to 2D in Katana. So like ambient occlusion, curvature, all kind of mesh map based. Basically taking a network material and then baking that based on the UVs to a texture map per UV patch.
I think that there are some renderers that are able to support that. Ariel, have you done any tests in that area? I've definitely seen some stuff where you can render out, but I don't know if it's non-UV, non-camera based, if I'm honest. Have you managed to do any of that that's to a specific texture map?
I have seen some studios do it, but I haven't done it myself personally. But I'm sure it is something that that we can do.
Yeah, I think it's kind of renderer specific in which ones would be able to support it and how they'd support it. It just hasn't been part of our workflows that we both used. So it's one of those things that we'd have to have an investigation on and make sure we can get it to work.
And I can talk to Modo. So Modo have done some great work accelerating their render engine, but that is only for the camera-based rendering. So for having a render engine have these kind of rendering code paths that deal with the camera versus UVs, they're two very different types of things. So you don't normally get a guarantee that you'd have whatever works camera working for UV. So it's very much in the renderer partner of a renderer partner. So if we wanted to bring something from the renderer partners into Mari through Katana, we want to make sure there's this kind of standardized workflow that works with all of them, kind of like where we were talking in our future planned features in network materials, so having a material preview window. That's something that we also need to work with our renderer partners to make sure there's some standardized way that each of them can kind of integrate into that. So Katana can give you the same user experience for each renderer partner. It's kind of very important that, yeah, we have to work with them to get the best experience that's kind of the same across all renderers. So mesh baking to UVs is one of those things that we have to look to get help from the partners, and then see where that can go.
We've got a question that, considering the number of upvotes, it would be rude of me not to answer. So Peter's been asking, are we going to be having a Katana non-commercial to be able to test and learn at home? It's a great question, and we do get this quite regularly. We don't have plans for a non-commercial right now. What we do have is we have a trial license, and if you're in the middle of learning, you just have to reach out to us and we'll extend that trial license. It's the best way for us to work in terms of the overhead of having a non-commercial working at the same time. It's a lot of it is just to do with the upkeep of doing a non-commercial for us. So it's much easier for us to do trial versions and to continue to extend them. So feel free to start a trial version and then start asking for an extension when you're partway through your learning. If you're a student, you'll be getting a much longer license than the 30 days anyway. So that's usually the best structure for learning Katana. I know it's not the answer you were looking for, Peter, but hopefully at least we haven't ignored you.
Excellent. What else can we answer here? Yeah, so Python APIs for Mari and Katana containing type hints. I guess Gary and Katana, any plans for that?
So I do know that I think it's with Python 3.5, you had the ability to include type hints with the Python, any Python that you write, to make it easier to query and to find out what the expectations are. We don't have a specific block of work right now plugged into to provide those, but it's not something that we've ruled out before we get to release at the end of the year. It's one of those things that we'll be having a conversation with our clients and existing customers and seeing whether they'd like that.
And one of the things that we'd hope to do is kind of align all of the various script editors across all Foundry products, so that one thing, a feature we can get in one will hopefully get across to another. So these are some of the things we're also trying to do, is kind of align all of our backend technologies so that we can kind of leverage each other's homework, essentially. Do you plan to update Mari UI to support multi-monitors of different DPIs? Yes, it is something on the roadmap. It's just one of those hard ones to kind of spend time on, as we get a lot of requests for a lot of artist-based features, and we're trying to just kind of manage the demands for workflow changes and such. But hopefully, with the upgrades in the VFX reference platform 2020, we're hoping that the multi-monitor DPI issues that we have had in the 4 series will be to a lesser extent, but we're still testing that, and we will hopefully have an update on that when we come closer to launching Mari 5. Okay, why don't you find one? Oh, here's one for you, Gary. Is live new compositing on the roadmap plugged for Katana 5? Presumably, it's not slated for 4.x.
So that's right. So Todd, what we actually have planned for the live Nuke compositing and when we're actually going to be release it is we have a dual release. What we're doing towards the end of the year, which is going to be basically the only difference between the two will be Python 2 for one and Python 3 for the other. And live Nuke compositing will be part of that. So you'll be able to have it, but it won't be in like a 4.0 release or something like that. It's a bit too big of a block of work to be including in a maintenance release. I think the current plan is probably a 4.5, 5.0 dual release towards the end of the year, and it will be included with that. So exciting times. I hope it's something you're looking forward to, because it's something I'm really excited to get to play with.
I'll answer this question from Anthony. Yeah, if it's possible to copy and paste the no-graph from Mari to Katana, it unfortunately will never be possible to do that due to the fact that Mari is its own rendering engine, and it's all GL-based, and all of our shading operations, they're all kind of based inside the Mari runtime, which is not something which we're looking to kind of port out to Katana, because it belongs to the Mari world, and getting the texture maps out of Mari and into the render engines into Katana is more the focus that we'll be having. However, we would be looking at bringing some of the niceties of Mari's viewport to Katana via a potential Hydra delegate using Foundry Viewer Tech. So you could bring things like our render vendor partner approximations of GLSL to the rich previews in Katana. Right. I think we answered that one already. Just clearing that off the deck.
Here up. Hi. So Ariel, do you want to answer this one about the USD preview surface example?
Yeah. So with Katana 4, we have support for USD shaders in Katana. So with a network material create node, you can use it and USD preview surface and other USD shaders that come with it, and build your own material networks. And within that same network material create node, if let's say you also wanted to create an Arnold shader, Arnold material, then you can create that within the same context. And that will create material that is both that supports both USD shaders as well as your renderer specific one.
To expand on that, so essentially, if you look at the USD world, the material has a connection to the network upstream with different terminal contexts. So you'd have a different terminal context for the USD preview surface, a different one for RenderMan, different one for Arnold, and that can all be packaged underneath the same material. So we do the same thing in Katana. You have, when you create a network material, depending on how many renderer plugins you have registered in that session, you'll see multiple terminals grouped under each renderer, including USD for the preview surface. And you just pull these nodes upstream, plug them to the correct terminals, and we package all that, send it to USD, and the renderer will ask for the appropriate context terminal and get all those nodes. And that's how it's done.
Cool.
We have some examples of creating material networks with USD on the Foundry Learn page as well, under the tutorials category. So feel free to take a look at those and let us know if there's anything that's missing as well. We always want to hear feedback from you, and yeah, we'll just continue to expand our learning material.
How about we answer this one together there, Gary? I'll take the Mari side. Mari runs primarily on the GPU, and it uses the OpenGL engine to do all of its computing, which doesn't use any of the specialty features of CUDA and RTX that you see from NVIDIA. And this is kind of just basic OpenGL. So the more teraflops your graphics card can pack, the more things Mari can do, higher frame rates it can be, etc. CPU, Mari doesn't do much with the CPU except for broker texture maps to the GPU for it to do its painting, flattening, and sending back to the CPU, to the hard drive. Katana, on the other hand,
I think you're thrown to me for that one. Yeah, so most of Katana will be on the CPU. The things that are on the GPU will be things like the Hydra viewer. Also, some of our render partners that you can plug in have a GPU-based mode, so you can render things like Arnold on the GPU. So it depends on your renderer. I think for most scene graph processing, you're probably going to be CPU. You're going to want to have a decent-sized CPU. But if you're doing a lot of GPU-based rendering or GPU-based viewing inside the Hydra viewer, then you'll want to invest some money in the GPU as well. But we're also, HD Storm is based around OpenGL, so you're going to be, whatever works with that will work with Katana. We do have some specifications in the in the docs for you to see that. We do most of our testing against, not the GeForce line of cards, but against the more expensive version. So, but I have and continue to use GeForces on personal machines that also work as well. So whatever you consider to be your higher priority should be good. Cool.
Yes, I have news on the adoption of OCO version 2. We're currently targeting the reference platform 2020, which specifies OCO version 1.x. But we are looking to reevaluate that potentially later in the year. Before we release Mari 5 and Katana 5, we shall have a reevaluation, see where the industry is with that. But right now, we're currently targeting what is specified in the VFX reference 2020, which is 1.x. Nice bite-sized question and answer. What else do we have here? An easy way to export material information to be imported in DCCs like Maya. So, if you're using Katana and you use the USD material bake into USD, that would essentially encode the native shading nodes from the renderer plugin that you've used to create the material network in Katana. With the USD material bake, and a USD file, look, you can actually send that upstream to programs like Maya, Houdini, UC Shade, and it should have a one-to-one representation of the network you authored in Katana, if that answers your question.
I will
elaborate there.
Yeah, let me add a couple of, because there's other questions around this in the USD material bake, and there's a couple of gotchas in that side that maybe it'd be nice to get out there so people know. When you're baking out with USD material bake, and the examples that we show when you're using just the USD preview surface and plugging into the USD ports, that will work out of the box straight away. If you're trying to write out something that is going to one of the renderers, like you're plugging into an Arnold renderer or you're plugging into RenderMan or 3D Light, you do actually have to have the render delegate connected and part of the USD that it's being picked up. And the reason for that is the attributes that Katana has internally for all of those materials, they need to know how to map into a USD world. And they get that information by querying something called the SDR registry. And that's where it finds the names and the types of all of the materials. So if you are baking out from Katana and you want to bake to Arnold, you have to have the Arnold render delegate plugged in so we can communicate with it, query it and say, you know, when we're talking to you about your standard surface, what type is this thing called diffuse color? Yeah, we can probably work it out, but there are some examples where that's not totally obvious. So it's all about having that handshake to work out the conversion from Katana to USD. But that should enable you to move it to whatever other applications you like. We are going to be talking with the render vendors to make sure that they can have the render delegates shipping with Katana in future versions, especially when our render delegates are where we want them to be, so you can just see them and switch from the HD Storm. And that should solve a lot of those problems and make it all a lot easier for you to do that. But right now, you kind of have to do a little bit of the work yourself to get the render delegate actually connected. Hopefully that answers multiple questions that I've been seeing around the USD material bake.
I also want to add that if you have any issues around Katana or even any other Foundry software, do go ahead and ask our support team. They're really good. We have 24-hour coverage as well, and it can help raise any issues or any concerns that you might have, and also let us know what our users are coming across and what issues, what are the problem points for them. So definitely keep in touch and let us know whenever you have these issues.
Now I jumped the gun answering this, putting this question as live answer. So would it be possible to include the map exporters in Mari as an option for the TXTX and TLL files? So we aren't able to redistribute our render partners' executables. However, what we can do in future is put example command lines which you could use with the post-process export. For example, the TX make source target command line, but you'd have to on your end essentially make sure that those executables are pathed correctly in your path environment variable in Windows 9, so that you could just run unless you put the entire full path to where those executables are. But we wouldn't bundle those with our Foundry products as they are not ours. Any time for one more, Gary?
Yeah.
Why don't you pick one? Or Charlie, why don't you pick one and answer one?
Yeah,
you want me to answer one? Are there plans? Have we done this one? Are there plans for Mari to tackle more real-time workflows in games? I don't know how to answer these sort of questions. I shouldn't have picked this question. So with the workflow that we're planning to do with USD and the future integration into Katana, there's no real reason why you couldn't start integrating those sort of things further into other applications like Unreal. I don't think we have any set plans as of yet to specifically tackle games workflow, but correct me if I'm wrong, Rory, I feel like that's something you would be able to integrate further in the future.
Not quite right, Charlie. With the kind of the the route we're going with, kind of trying to author some kind of initial looks for Katana via USD Shade. As Unreal in virtual production takes hold, we're looking to do more with USD and USD Shade with things like integrating NVIDIA Omniverse as USD based. And once we author the USD file, that could be then brought into a Unreal session. So more on that as that develops. All right. I think that's about all the time we have for answering questions and answers. Gary, you want to sign us out?
I started us off. I think you should sign us out.
Thank you very much, everybody, for coming along, seeing what we have to show you, and asking such very thought-provoking and challenging questions for the product team of Look Development Lighting at Foundry. And thank you, and hope you all have a great morning, afternoon, evening, and day.